Welcome back to the channel. It's Derek and Taylor for another episode of the Fantasy Flyer. Today we're going to cover some trade, not last week's trades, but like the real trades that happened. Last year's trade deadline was a little more exciting. This year's, things happen. They matter, but it was good. Taylor, how you doing?
Not too shabby, not too shabby. But yeah, not the most exciting trade deadline that I don't know if
Uh,
wanted's the right way to put it, but I'll definitely say for my team, I was
definitely,
expecting something.
definitely not, definitely not the one that I was looking for. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Getting my phone connected as we speak, because that's the thing that I have to do. But yeah, that was. We'll cover some of these, and we're going to talk real football terms because most of these I don't think have a fantasy impact at all, except for your defensive streamers.
Mm.
But they are interesting. The little shake up of the league for sure. So we'll chat a little about the trades. Um, you kind of can't start talking about the trades without bringing up what happened with Washington, who made it clear before Sunday's game against the Eagles. They were like, well, this is going to depend. This game is going to heavily affect which direction we go.
Hmm.
And they lost. And then come Tuesday, they traded away Chase Young and Montez Sweat to separate teams for draft picks. Chase Young to the 49ers for a third rounder and another potential third rounder in 2025. And they traded Montez Sweat to the Bears for a 2024 second. Um, two different teams acquiring two different pass catchers for two different reasons. In my opinion, I don't know how you see both of these, but this is the 49ers. This is the 49ers trying to make sure that what happened the last 3 weeks doesn't continue to happen. Them sliding down, going 5-3 after starting 5-0. And then for the Bears, it's just making sure that they can continue to compete in some of these games, potentially maybe re-sign Montez Sweat,
Mm.
um, and to continue going forward as the Bears will still have a monstrous amount of cap going into 2024 offseason. So those are my two takes on those for the most part. The 49ers are just absolutely stacked. They shouldn't be losing to any offense easily.
Yeah.
That's that's about what I
They
got.
I mean they've been struggling a little bit offensively. We know their defense is great. They've had some injuries there. This only bolsters their defense and just makes it that much more difficult for other teams to outscore them with the offense struggling. And I don't see their offense hopefully struggling for too much longer. I think they'll right the ship. You know, Purdy's still a young quarterback. He's definitely not, we've talked about this before. He's not the type of quarterback that's going to be a huge difference maker. He's definitely, working with the system.
Yeah.
But I think once they get Debo back and they work through some of these things with Purdy and he continues to grow as a quarterback, it'll correct itself and the defense will allow them to stay in it while they're, fixing these things.
They're I mean, Debo's been out for 2 games now. Um I think he's got one more at least that he will
Yeah,
be
that's what I
missing.
heard.
Um they're on bye this week. So it could coming into what'll be week 10 at that point. It may not he may be back for week 10, which is, that'd be a plus to get some more receiving help back in that game. Christian McCaffrey doesn't need any more help. He can do whatever he wants, but that's why I say most of this, I think, in my opinion, kind of falls back on the defense and just letting getting behind in games.
Right.
Um, and they haven't played bad teams. Like it's not like they're going out there and absolutely just standing around on defense. Um, but it's put Purdy in a hole early. And what we found out over the last 3 weeks, essentially, if you put Purdy in a hole, he gets very, very difficult. Or if he finds it very, very difficult to get out of that hole. So I'm hopeful for them. But at the same point, I'm changing my name real quick because I realize your name is still on here. Just so you're wondering. There we go. But at the same point, if the team doesn't get going offensively, the defense is going to have to get stronger. So it's one of those win-win situations when you trade for somebody like Chase Young. The Bears getting Montez Sweat, like I said, I think that's Our defense hasn't been able to provide enough pressure on opposing teams. And if we can sign him to even a halfway decent deal for us going long term, it's an easy piece to acquire. They love giving up second round picks. Hopefully, this one worked out better than Chase Claypool last
Yeah.
year. That was not, that was very, very sad. That was, wasn't good. So, this one, next trade happened Saturday. Wasn't Tuesday during the trade deadline. It was a couple days before. Giants trading Leonard Williams to the Seahawks for a 24 second and a 24 fifth. I I've been seeing the Seahawks defense take leaps forward, and not steps. I mean leaps. They were bad the first 3 or 4 weeks, and they came back after the bye for them, which was week 5, and they looked much more solid. I think if Leonard Williams does happen to stay there, I think it's worth the second and the 25 fifth to keep him there. What's your take?
Yeah, I don't mind this. It's like borderline a tad pricey, but like I said, borderline. I don't mind this at all. I think that it's a fine attempt at making the defense a little stronger. He's a good player, so hopefully they can get him up to speed and, you know, just make the defense better. Because although they have been playing better, they definitely have holes.
8, 9, 10. They're 11th in quarterback pressure percentage, so it'll help with that. They've gotten overall defense is ranked 19th, which is better than it was. I mean, they were 28th to 30th in most categories after 3 or 4 weeks, which is usually where you start to find statistical patterns.
Yeah.
So, and that was before you get Leonard Williams. Williams had a good game for the Giants, I think last week, the week before. So, great, fine, perfectly fine. I want to see how he fits in with there. So,
Yeah.
amen to the Seahawks. Next one, which has a very minimal fantasy relevance. I will touch on this one a little bit more as far as the fantasy goes. The Browns traded Donovan Peoples-Jones to the Lions for a 25 sixth rounder, 2025 sixth rounder. This is two teams that I think there's one that really, as far as fantasy in talking about the Browns, I don't think this has a huge impact for a lot. You may start seeing a few more snaps for Cedric Tillman or for David Bell, who have been, despite being rather high capitalized draft picks, they haven't seen the field a lot. David Bell, 4% snaps the last 2 weeks. Cedric Tillman hasn't been on the field since week 4. And I don't really understand. Is he been hurt? I mean,
Tillman?
yeah.
I don't
Marquise
think so.
Marquise Goodwin has been on the field
Yeah.
3 times as many snaps the last 3 weeks than either of them. But I think there's a little bit more life for him now. Donovan Peoples-Jones was the leading snap leader for this team. He's not even he's not one of the top 2 receivers, but he has the most snaps, and neither him nor Amari Cooper nor Elijah Moore have missed a game. So that's important to note. It's not because somebody missed a game and Donovan Peoples-Jones was there to fill it. No, they have snapped Donovan Peoples-Jones the most. 439 snaps through 8 weeks to Amari Cooper's 415, Elijah Moore 413. It's actually 7 weeks because they had their bye, but same thing. He's consistently seeing 80 to 90% of snaps. I think it's with those snaps to go somewhere. It's not Marquise Bell. You have to see David Bell and Cedric Tillman. In dynasty leagues, I think that means a lot more.
Right.
Your redraft league, obviously, it's hard enough to find Amari Cooper to have this crazy mid-teen value. Elijah Moore is flyer value at the highest. Anything else below that is worth it in a redraft league. On the other side of this, and I think this is going to ruffle some feathers, what I'm about to say. You have to replace Marvin Jones, but the fact that you're not immediately stepping in with Jameson Williams is concerning to me.
Right.
The Lions spent this draft capital on Jameson Williams, who's healthy, off suspension, fine by all intents and purposes. And they were like, we need a little bit more depth. So what's your opinion on the Inquisition here? Because Jameson Williams is at 40 last 2 weeks, 44%, 40% snaps, 33 and 34 respectively. Khalif Raymond is there. He's seen a bunch of snaps.
Reynolds.
Well,
Josh
yeah.
Reynolds.
Reynolds is now kind of the two, which is again, that's why I say if you have this perfectly good looking Jamison Williams right here, you're now shoving him behind Laporta, Amon Ra. I mean, you're putting Reynolds in there a lot more. Why isn't
Mhm.
Jamison? What's the concern there? Um, and that's my take on it is it's concerning for the Jamison Williams owner.
Yeah, this is a tad odd to me. I don't really see what the Lions are looking for here in Peoples Jones. I
Mhm.
mean, he was getting hype either his rookie or sophomore season with the Browns in training camp, and obviously they liked him to a degree to the point where he's been getting close to 90% of the snaps the entire season for the most part. He's just not doing that much with it. The Browns are obviously in a situation where they're not going to go too far this season, so I understand them trying to get something for someone. Uh, I don't know. This is just kind of weird across the board for me. I don't see why the Lions did it, and the only reason I see the Browns doing it is to get some sort of capital. But like a sixth round pick in 2025 doesn't really do much for me. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, he's so far this year 97 yards receiving, 18 targets, 8 catches for Donovan Peoples-Jones, no touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Elijah Moore has been doing more. They went out and got him, and I think I like him obviously more as a just player in general, and he's been doing more for fantasy. Um, and if they have confidence in Tillman, sure, whatever. But I don't know that a sixth does a heck of a lot, and I really don't understand the line side of this.
From the Browns' point of view, it's to get your young guys more field. I
Yeah,
know that's for 100% sure, and not to say that Donovan Peoples-Jones is old; he's 24,
yeah,
but
exactly.
but he's out there as he's a really good he's a really good blocker out on the wings, so I know that. They like him when it comes to outside runs.
Mhm.
Um, so getting rid of him is interesting in that sense. It's maybe more middle. I don't know. I also kind of was under the assumption that the Browns were like, they're they have a good defense, but because of the offense and their issues with the quarterback, they're not going anywhere this year. No, if the playoffs started, they're in. Which I didn't know. That started this week, they'd be in. Um,
Interesting.
it- right. Um, okay, that's fine by me. I didn't realize that either. But and honestly, they take on an Arizona team this week that if Clayton Tune actually starts, I don't see how they aren't 500, 4-4, which is fine. Um, but that's they did something there, the Brown side, just to get the young guys. Detroit is the interesting side. I want to see how Jamison Williams' snap percentage is affected by this, if at all. Right? He could still see 40 to 50. Donovan Peoples Jones isn't seeing 90% Detroit. Not like he had fantasy value anyway.
Yeah.
But if he's seeing the field in 3 wide receiver sets to block or in 2 wide receiver sets to block for an outside run on some of that stuff, like we've seen them do with Jameer Gibbs recently, especially on Monday night, that's telling to me. Um, Interesting. I'm looking forward to that. Moving on. Next one, it's not a trade, but it's worth noting the Bills signed Leonard Fournette for the rest of this season. Um, Interesting midseason move. I think out of one of the sides of the ball on a team that we didn't think would do anything would probably be the Bills offense. One of the top 6 or 7 in the league that really didn't need to do anything. And they went out and they signed Leonard Fournette 2 days before the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Um, your opinion on how this affects James Cook.
I don't think that this really affects too much here. Definitely not James Cook. I think this is we plan on going to the playoffs and hopefully the Super Bowl. We need depth. Harris is on IR. We don't have anybody else besides Murray and Cook. I mean, I guess Hines is on the pup, so he might be
Mhm.
back shortly. So I think this is more of a long-term play. I, if you've been hurting and relying on Latavius Murray, then you may see some changes there, and Fournette may eat into that or completely take that over. We'll see. He's obviously a tad younger. What, 5 years? I guess actually he's 28 and Murray's 33. So, but he's obviously got a lot of tread on his tire, if you will. So I think
I
it's
mean,
just a long-term thing.
he's seen it makes sense. I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm not rushing out to get him on my waiver wire. I'm not. If somebody else picked him up, good. If James Cook gets hurt, though,
Yeah.
yeah, Leonard Fournette is the stash play right now.
Hmm.
If you're the James Cook owner, that's my go-to handcuff for my running backs. Unless you have maybe no, I can't even think that. I wouldn't even stash Elijah for CMC. I think there's better. This offense can work so well through Leonard Fournette, both in running and passing games,
Yeah.
to a better extent than James Cook in such an emergency situation. That's actually almost an upgrade if he gets used to the playbook and gets it rolling. So that's probably my number one stash for that. But until then, um, Latavius Murray is averaging like 3.5 yards per carry this season. It ain't great.
Yeah.
His last two games, he's averaged 2 yards or less on 4 and 5 carries. It's been bad. He's basically just walking into the defensive line. Um, almost literally. Yeah,
Yeah.
Damian Harris isn't doing. He's hurt potentially for the season. They haven't IR'd him yet. I don't think, have they?
Oh, I'm seeing IR here.
Is
Yeah.
he okay?
Placed on injury reserve.
Smart. He should be because that's the way the injury looked.
Yeah.
But that's so if you know that and you need your depth for specifically this time of season, where if you're 5-3 like the Bills, you can't afford to lose the next 3 or 4 in this division.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
I like it.
You could see Fournette start to have a goal line role.
Yeah, that'll be where it'll start. Tom Brady teaching him pass catching. That's could come in handy.
Yeah.
So I like that signing. Um, much to the chagrin of Taylor and his dynasty team that we are in, Kirk Cousins is gone with a torn Achilles for the rest of the season.
Yeah. The injury riddled dynasty team that I have continues to fall apart.
Yeah, it's a sad moment. However, the Vikings went out and quickly remedied almost nothing. They they got Josh Dobbs and a 24/7 for a 24/6 from the Cardinals. Again, another one that kind of has fantasy on both sides. One for the Cardinals, the easy one. Kyler Murray will be playing this
Yeah.
season. They will be doing an attempt to make it to I think the real green light for this trade was seeing the 49ers lose 3 in a row. I think that's it. I think you see
Hmm.
Kyler. If Kyler comes back and the team is nowhere near it, shut him down. You don't waste it, right? The green light here is that and they're going to play the 49ers when Kyler comes back. So they have a shot here.
Yeah.
It's this that division is not out of reach for anybody, which is not how I thought I would say it after half the season.
Yeah, for real.
But trading Dobbs into the Vikings, Dobbs is not going to play this week, from what I understand. Week 10 would probably be his debut. The Vikings are rolling with Jaron Hall. Sorry, Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson owners, specifically Jordan Addison this week. It's not looking great. But he's going to be a target. You never know. Rookies have had some surprising games recently, which we will talk about later. Um, but other than that, the Cardinals just kind of made a little bit of a capitalization on somebody they invested an injury time frame into, essentially.
Right.
That's the best way I see it. The Vikings get a piece who is a solid arm. Um, he can chuck it sometimes. He's not bad. And I think the big plus side to this acquisition for the Vikings is that he can run sometimes.
Hmm.
He has better legs than Kirk Cousins. So if Alexander Madison and Cam Akers can't run, somebody should. Um, so I this was a good phone call for the Vikings to make and the Cardinals to look around and smell blood in the water with the 49ers. Granted, the 49ers did their own thing mere hours after this trade, but that's how it works. The pieces moved. I like this trade for both sides.
Yeah. I'd heard rumblings that they were talking with the Saints and about Winston. I would have liked that longer term for this season, but not too much more. Obviously, Winston a lot of interceptions. Dobbs showed, some sort of journeyman. It's I don't know how else to put it other than that, but basically like beginning of the season, he's been rolling along decently, competitively, I guess is the biggest thing here. So whenever Mullins comes back, they'll have a bit of a competition there to see if it's Dobbs or Mullins or if Hall actually turns out to be okay. I don't know. I don't know what this means for the Vikings long term this season, but yeah, this is perfectly fine to hopefully remedy something this season for them.
You said Dobbs and Mullins.
Yeah, Mullins is the Vikings backup. He's on IR right now.
Oh, so you think they're gonna have a little matchup there? They're
I
gonna
mean, he knows the
for
system
who's.
better. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess you're not wrong, but I was looking for my "Are you sure about that?" button. There it is. Are you sure about that? I don't think I think Dobbs would be the guy from here on out. The Vikings have to at this point realize they're salvaging a season.
Oh
The
yeah.
there's no there's an extremely small outside chance they would get the seventh playoff spot, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because you have Dallas and Philly doing what they did last year. Okay. Tampa Bay and New Orleans, maybe somebody in that division. They're really not that far apart. I think it's the Saints. They're not that, so they're fighting for another one. Then
I
it's
mean,
like,
technically the Falcons are tied with the
is it the
Saint.
Falcons?
Falcons
Okay,
and Saints are both
so
4-4.
it's really a three-headed race because Tampa Bay has fallen off a ledge recently. Um, but the winner of that division is going to be what? Maybe 9-8,
Right.
10-7 is probably the ceiling. You're looking at five teams that are going to be probably 11-6 or better. Um, then you have Detroit, which should be one of those teams.
Mm.
You'd have to get to 10-7, and I don't know. Maybe they can. It depends on if Justin Jefferson comes back and they surprise us. As far as your Jameis Winston
Comment.
comment, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. As far as Jameis Winston, I had him in our 53 for a waiver wire pickup
So did I.
on Monday. On Monday, and I
Okay.
was like, I'll leave him there, and then when the trade deadline passes, we'll see what happens. Nothing happened, so I removed it, obviously, because why waste the money on him? But
Yeah.
he is good for when you have wide receivers who can beat man coverage off the line,
Hmm.
and you just throw it over the top, and away they go. So, which you can do with Jordan Addison and mostly Addison. We've seen a lot more finesse out of Justin Jefferson recently. Um, but I think this is a smart pickup for the Vikings. We'll talk about these guys in a little bit. Last trade we'll just mention Packers traded Rasul Douglas and a 24 fifth to the Bills for a 24 third. I see this as a response to Jalen Ramsey coming back interdivision. You lose your cornerback. Who left? No, not Tredavious. Who one of their cornerbacks left. Pardon me while I continue to finish the research I was doing on lunch and I got confused on or got lost on. I was looking this up because I was like, they lost one of their cornerbacks. I can't remember who it was.
You talking about?
It is Tredavious. Tredavious White went to IR. So, as a good way to fill in for that, Kyrie Elam's been kind of hurt, but
Yeah.
now you have Taron Johnson and Rasul Douglas as your two cornerbacks. I think that's a good way to battle um the Dolphins and how their secondary looks. They have some dangerous weapons too. That's just my look at it. Solid pick for the Bills defense. If he acclimates well, it'll be perfectly fine. I'm not going to go too in depth on it. I like the Bills defense already as it is.
Yeah, I thought Ramsey was going to be out longer, but he came back just in time to play my good old Pats and had a pick six, I think.
It was close. I don't know if it was a pick six, but he definitely had a pick,
Yeah.
which is what happens when Mac Jones throws the ball.
Well,
Uh,
that's true too.
yeah. So a lot of other trades that went down. A couple of offensive linemen moved ships. Vikings traded an offensive lineman, which again, between this trade and that one and the record and what's going on, all signs that the Vikings, I think, are just they're looking at 2024,
Hmm.
which is probably smart. I wouldn't be surprised again if Justin Jefferson doesn't see the field the rest of this year. I just doesn't have a contract. Why risk it? Give me money and I'll play, maybe.
Right.
But that's my opinion. So, next, second part two of the show. We only have two part D. It is a scale of interest. So a lot of things changed, but not only with the trade deadline, but with how the games played out this past weekend. Here's how this game works. A name will be presented to us by me, which means it's really only presented to Taylor. And it's not even presented to him because he can see the document I'm reading from. So it's really presented to you. As a host, one of us, we will imagine that the name has come up in trade talks. Each host will take approximately 60 seconds and give us an explanation and a scale of interest in that player. I have encouraged Taylor, and I will do the same, to use draft style for either redraft or dynasty league, depending on the player. We have 8 names here, and we will start off with name number 1. I'll let you go first, Taylor. Will Levis is on the board. Had a fantastic game against the Falcons, 4 touchdowns, 3 of them to DeAndre Hopkins from 784 miles out. And he chucked the ball with great accuracy deep down the field. He is now the starter for tomorrow night's game. It'll be tonight's game by the time this video is posted, against the Steelers. Will Levis is on the clock. Where are you putting him in your scale of interest?
Scale of interest. I mean, this one's definitely from a dynasty perspective. In redraft, I mean, 26 points isn't nothing to scoff at. And that's a 4-point touchdown league, I guess. So I don't know that I would trade for him in redraft, just after one game, but my interest is peaked. From a dynasty perspective, though, I'll focus there. And I guess thinking of our league, which we play 2 quarterbacks, so think of a super flex, if you will. He's young. He had some hype, obviously fell a little bit. This only bolsters things. I'm definitely in for maybe a late round first, early round second. I mean, I'm definitely stingy with trading my picks. I'd rather receive picks, but I think that's where I'm sitting. I don't know if I'd give away a 24 because of the possibility of one of those picks becoming like Caleb. Caleb Williams, is that his last name?
Hey, I
Uh,
doubt it.
but yeah, somewhere in there. Probably a 25.
So you're at 25 first to 25 second, roughly.
Yeah.
Probably in that. I am in the same kind of round. I'm not afraid of the 24s if you have a late round pick, because I think your 2 quarterbacks, May and Williams, will be gone before him, assuming Williams even declares. I think May declares for sure. But I assume that they're gone. You can probably a Bo Nixon, you can Michael Penix. Yeah, you could fine, I guess. If Levis is going to, at this point, I'm probably going to wait and see what happens Thursday. Trading
Yeah.
right now isn't smart. If he has a good game against Pittsburgh, which is a bottom third of the league pass defense, this is also a Pittsburgh team that can apply pressure. We have a TJ Watt there. So if he can handle that well and perform well, um, I'm in on a 24 pick. Right now I'm probably 24, like in our league again, Dynasty, 24 second, 24 fourth. I'd probably throw at it. And that's assuming I need a quarterback.
Right.
So if you're buying at this point.
Yeah.
If you're
And
if
I
you're
mean,
if you're going next year, I'd probably stretch to a 25 first, and I'm with you there.
yeah. To your point, Pittsburgh having a decent defense and waiting might not be a bad play because you might be able to drive the price down a tiny bit after some poor showing, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's an interesting. Real quick, just to look up the Steelers because I'm all about these pressure numbers recently. They're like some of my favorite defensive numbers right now. To find our friends, the Pittsburgh Steelers, what is their? Why can I not spell Steelers? There they are, aren't they? Right there. They're 25% pressures on a 8% quarterback hurry rate, which are both middle of the pack essentially. They blitz 4th most in the league. So they're there for the most part. Next name on our list is Jordan Addison. We just talked about the trade with Minnesota. I will start off this one. In redraft, it's essentially, if you have to, I would avoid him right now. I'm not a fan of. I don't think this offense is going to look amazing the rest of the season, no matter what you do. I think that if they want to mix things up, you have to start running the ball. For me, Addison is probably, wide receiver 2 the rest of the year, roughly. In Dynasty, this becomes much more interesting. Does Kirk Cousins come back? Does Justin Jefferson come back? This is a lot different for our Dynasty league.
Yeah.
I like Addison being a good value there. I'll put a 24 second on him right now if I had to. I'm not going to spend a first on him for anything at this point, I don't think, and not because he can't have value next year or anything like that. This wide receiver class in 2024 is deep. It's deep. You're going to find quality wide receivers like for our draft well into the second, if not third round. It all depends on where they go. So that's my take on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I would say that I would value him as a first in sort of a general sense, but to your point, we don't know if Kirk is coming back, if they're going to have a young quarterback, if they're going to have a veteran that's not as good as Kirk. If Justin Jefferson does come back, then that kind of, stifles Addison a bit. Obviously, he's proven that he's talented and he can do stuff even with Jefferson there.
Yeah.
But he's also, I don't want this to take away from him too much. He's 5'11", 175 pounds.
Speedster.
Yeah, he's a speedster for sure. So it's kind of, if he is the number 2 on the team, it kind of makes him a boom or bust candidate. So I think he's better than boom or bust, but yeah, long story short, I'd stick with a 2 second rounder.
Yeah, and to tie in the next one, which is Justin Jefferson, I think no matter where he goes, he's an absolute asset.
Yeah.
What he does affects Addison, but I'm not trading for both of them at any given time together. So at least I shouldn't. I wouldn't think would be smart. So for me, Jefferson in Dynasty is a first plus another player, another wide receiver. Even like I won't even say that name. I would, a first. This is gonna hurt your feelings. I'm sorry. A first in Chris Olave for Justin Jefferson is,
Oof.
yeah. Well, Olave ain't been doing much this year, so I'm so super sorry.
Well, that team's in shambles.
Yeah, well, they have the most offensive plays this year out of any team in the
I know,
league.
it's crazy.
Crazy. But I don't think I'm far off by stating that for Justin Jefferson. Do you disagree?
No.
Not maybe not necessarily the player, but as far as like the first and another player.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, being the Olave owner, last year maybe you're right. This year is definitely sort of recency bias. I would do that trade for sure. Long term, Olave hopefully turns it around or gets something that helps him out. But yeah, Jefferson is a huge difference maker, and I would bend over backwards almost to get him.
That's fair. Next one is a wide receiver who just saw his first decent game after 7 weeks. Quentin Johnston of the Los Angeles Chargers finally had 5 catches on 6 targets, 50 yards against the Bears. They looked like they wanted to get him involved. Kellen Moore targeted him more than Josh Palmer, and it paid off. He ran good routes. I mean, the eye test for the first time this year didn't look half bad. I'm not going to say it was amazing, but the eye test showed that he's there. If you could give it to him, do it. I'll take the reins on this one. I own Quentin Johnston. I don't think he's a first round pick where he was drafted still at this point. This happens 3 or 4 more weeks. Maybe we're creeping into that realm. I'm thinking 25 second and not even the 24 pick. Again, that 24 pick class is so deep. Like 25 seconds, like the ceiling. You really would probably be better at a 25 third. So I want to see more out of Quentin Johnston. Very good sign though, if they can continue to get him involved, and hopefully that'll continue against the Jets this weekend. Taylor, you're on the clock at about 5 minutes left.
Yeah. Palmer was definitely re-aggravated something, or injured another part of his body. So he's dealing with something. So I think that for at least next week, we will see more Johnston, and hopefully that, allows him to sort of break through and become part of this offense more frequently. I would agree. I'm not going crazy for him yet. He, in a weird way, kind of makes me think of, can't think of the name, but the Patriots receiver that they drafted in the first round, like last pick in the first round, and it's just been nothing.
Pute.
No, sorry, a couple years ago.
Oh.
Um,
Taekwon Thornton.
before that, don't worry about
Really?
it.
Jesus
Uh,
Christ.
I'm talking like he's a big dude, but he doesn't get the separation, and that was the problem with this guy. I'll think of the name while we're doing somebody else. Anyways,
That works.
he is somebody that really needs to prove himself before I'm going to go after him too crazily.
That's fair. Next up, Zach Charbonnet outsnapped Kenneth Walker, probably injury related. I'm not trading for him in any format until I see that again. I think we both talked about this before the show, and I don't think I'm stating anything out of bounds for both of us. Charbonnet has a little bit of pass catching. He ran very effectively. Anything else you got to add? I mean, I saw this. The scale of interest for me is minimal right now.
Yeah, I like the talent, but with Walker there, I know Walker had some injury concerns or whatever last week. I'm not going too crazy here. I don't, running back committees, you're not going to get much out of him right now. Dynasty, sure,
Yeah,
I'll show some interest, but
yeah, he's still even in Dynasty. He can't go much more than a third on that right now. Unfortunately, you got to see something.
right.
That's just the sad part of it. Next up,
N'Keal Harry.
There he is. The traveling salesman of football between the Patriots, the Bears, the Vikings, and somewhere else.
Right.
Next up, Demario Douglas. I do want to spend just a second on Demario Douglas. He should be on everybody's waiver wire list this week. He should be on everybody's target list going forward. This man he took the most snaps last week when Kendrick Bourne left. Kendrick Bourne is out for the season. Demario Douglas, who is a 5th or 6th round wide receiver. I want to toot my own horn a little bit because I shared the videos of Demario Douglas during OTAs and I sent them to our buddy Ian and I said, this guy is the guy. It's not Butte. And he was like, I don't know, maybe like he looks really good. We'll see. Here we are. He's number 2 on the depth chart. Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster are the 1 and 3. I don't see them being huge threats. Douglas is the speedster. He got the most targets last week out of any of the wide receivers. He is the target guy for the Patriots. It's not a great offense, but opportunity is the brethren to success in fantasy, and it's here for Demario Douglas.
Yeah, and they seem to be trusting him more and more in critical situations, third downs, what have you.
Yeah.
And to your point, he was getting hype in the preseason, which I, as you know, sort of ignored because I took Butte over him solely on the fact that Butte obviously in college was a huge name up until his last season. So
Who
I just
drafted?
went with
Who drafted
what's that?
Demario Douglas? Who drafted Demario Douglas in ours? Was it?
Yeah, I thought you already said you did.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
me
yeah.
in the 6th round. Steal.
Yeah.
It's a great pick though, and honestly, if he's available on your waiver wire, go get him. For Dynasty, his value is probably a 24 third if you're absolutely dying, which nobody is. Wide receiver is a very healthy position now. But if you're absolutely dying for some reason in that magical scenario, Demario Douglas is probably worth about a 24
I mean, this is the Patriots' MO. They find somebody late that has the talent and they use them. So
real quick, because we have about 20 seconds. Jalen Waddle, 2 big back-to-back games. I like where this offense is treating him now compared to the first 6 weeks of the year. Obviously for Dynasty, you're going out and getting him. I'm probably not going nuts for Waddle over a lot of wide receivers, but keep an eye on him and his value. If somebody's selling as it comes towards your trade deadline and you need wide receiver help, go get him.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, I mean, he's worth like a 25 first. Who's the first guy we're talking about? Levitt? I would rather have Levis just because of the way quarterbacks are valued. But yeah, Waddle's a great name that I would value.
There you go. There's our scale of interest. Got about 20 seconds. This has been Derek. This has been Taylor. Bob Barker. Go ahead. Have a good football weekend.
Peace out.
Help control the pet population and the pet trade unit. Goodbye, everybody.